Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm here with Will. We're going to be talking about the top 5 mistakes when adding new corals to your tank.
Let's get right into it. Mistake number 1, not dipping your corals. This one seems like an obvious one, but a lot of us are guilty of it, right?
Yes, we are. I've been guilty of it personally.
Me too. Yeah, so the big thing is when you get your brand new coral, even though it looks clean, it might not actually be clean, right?
Yeah, a lot of those pests are really small, so they're really easy to miss, especially if you have LPS corals. The skeleton has a lot of hiding places, nooks and crannies that those flatworms and other nudibranchs can hide, especially if they're really small baby form.
Yeah, I found things buried into the skeletons. So how do you get rid of them? A coral dip, something like these guys here. Something like Coral RX is going to be a essential oil-based dip, and that's going to be a great, less powerful option. Or something like this Reef Primer is a potassium permanganate-based dip, and those are going to be really aggressive for those really hard to manage pests.
Yes, so there's a bunch of different dips out there in the market. You want to keep an eye on what one you want to use. Some of the ones that I like to use personally just for general dipping for any coral that I give in is going to be the Coral X or this Reef Primer. I think they're both really good options just to cover all your bases initially, unless you see something specific. You got some specialty dips like iodine and stuff like that that might be helpful, but 15 minutes of dipping before you add them to your tank can save you a lot of headache in the future with those pests. I don't like dealing with flatworms after they're in the tank.
No, another key thing to keep in mind is not just the pests, but during shipping and transit, sometimes those corals can get damaged. And so something like an iodine dip can help with that recovery process. So be sure, no matter what you're doing, dip your corals.
Mistake number 2 is not removing the frag plug before you add it to your tank. So when you are adding new corals, the frag plug is going to hold a lot of areas for pests to hide, just like those coral skeletons do. So removing the frag plug is going to just be a simple, easy way, even without dipping, just to remove a bunch of pests and save you a lot of headache in the future.
Right, that frag plug is basically like a rock in your tank. So the rock is what most pests live and harbor on. So be sure to cut that off. I recommend cutting off before the dip. So I'll go ahead and cut the frag plug and then dip the coral and then add it to the tank. If you do want it on a frag plug though, I would recommend getting new frag plugs and remounting it to a new one instead of putting that old one into your tank. Because like I said, that's where most of your pests are gonna be.
So not only is it for pests, in my opinion, it's also for aesthetics when I mount the coral in the tank. I don't like looking at a frag plug showing through my coral skeleton, especially those SPS corals, macros. I don't like seeing the disc on the base. I'd rather just see it form to the rock and adhere to the rock. So it'll make mounting easier. It'll look better once it grows out. And there's a lot of other benefits like the pests.
That's right. All right, number 3, not acclimating your corals to the new lighting. So when you get corals, they're gonna come from somewhere, right? And so maybe they come from a fish store, maybe they come from the ocean, maybe they come from a fellow reefer's tank, but the lighting is almost guaranteed to be different, right? So make sure when you're transferring those corals to your tank, you're gonna wanna acclimate them.
Yeah, so a lot of those newer lights on the market, especially LEDs, have acclimation mode. Take advantage of that. So make sure you acclimate your corals to the new light. Acclimating to lower light is a lot easier on the coral than it is going to higher light. So if you think you have really high intensity light, you're running like 800,000 power on your top of your tank and you want to put a coral up there, do that acclimation mode, save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of coral mortality by just doing the acclimation mode from the get-go.
Right.
Another thing to factor in is that spectrum. So some places have super heavy blue spectrums. If you're running a different spectrum, the coral has to adapt to that new spectrum.
That's right. So better safe than sorry. Lower your lights when you add a coral to your tank because you don't know where the coral's coming from. And then over time, you can raise it up. And I would say about 2 to 3 weeks is a good amount of time to raise that light. But if you can, go even longer than that, a month, 2 months. Really, you're not gonna notice very much of a difference aesthetically, but the corals will definitely notice.
Yeah, and another pro tip with acclimating your lights, if you already have established corals in the tank, use a frag rack on the glass, start the corals at the bottom of the tank and slowly raise it up every couple weeks.
Yep, that's another really, really easy way to acclimate your corals.
Mistake number 4 is not researching your coral species needs. So before you purchase anything for your aquarium, whether it be equipment or livestock, research what it needs, how it works. So with corals, make sure you research what the coral needs because not every coral is designed to live in the same environment.
That's right. Something like a blasto is going to need something way different than an acro. So be sure you know what the coral actually needs. Things like acros, SPS, or other small polyp, high light, high intensity corals, you're going to want to put them in the top of the tank. They're going to need more light from the get-go, more flow from the get-go. Whereas something like an LPS, a blasto, maybe mushrooms, things like those are going to need lower light, lower flow from the start. If you give them the wrong parameters, they aren't going to thrive in your tank.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make the mistake where they accidentally buy a soft coral thinking it's a photosynthetic species and it ends up being a non-photosynthetic species. So
That's right.
make sure you do as much research if you're doing softies, especially just to make sure you're not ending up with a non-photosynthetic coral, because a lot of them are super hard to care for, require daily, if not multiple daily feedings just to survive and do well, and won't do well if you put them in a lit tank or high light tank. So I made that mistake once, not gonna happen again.
Yep, research your corals, guys. Number 5 is not properly mounting your corals. So you just got this brand new coral, you're adding it into your tank, you get it right where you want it, and then you come back the next day and it's in your sand. Oh, that's definitely a mistake, right?
Yes. Corals probably don't want being in the sand upside down. So what are some pro tips that you have for mounting a coral securely?
Yeah, I mount a lot of corals here, and so the way to do it is definitely getting some coral glue onto that coral, putting epoxy onto it, getting more coral glue right onto that epoxy. So we call it a putty sandwich, kind of.
Yes.
And so you're gonna take that and shove it right where you want it into the rock and hold it there until that epoxy is pretty firm. And that way that's gonna really stay where you want it to. Now, the downside of that is a lot of times you'll see a lot of that epoxy. So I recommend using as little as you can, or trying to hide it with some other rocks when you do that.
Or using an epoxy that matches the color of your rock. So those purple epoxies do a really good job, and just know that it's gonna cover up with coralline pretty fast and the coral will encrust, especially if it's an SPS or acropora coral. So I really like it because you get the benefits of glue curing really, really fast.
Yep.
But you also get the strong hold and flexibility of where you mount the coral with the epoxy.
Yeah. So small corals, maybe skip the epoxy, just add some super glue, but anything bigger, definitely rock with the epoxy.
We've all made mistakes getting new corals. Will, what's a mistake that you've made?
I got my prize coral from Reef and Palooza, stuck it under the rock, and found it in the sand the next morning.
That's a bummer. What mistakes have you guys made? Let us know in the comments.